asked, within the progressive media, people asked whether Taksim is the new Tahrir Square or Turkish Tahrir Square. Well, sisters and brothers, as you know, in Tunisia and Egypt, the workers' organizations actively took the lead. But in Taksim, the workers' organizations were almost absent. One, two left-wing labor union confederations, KESK and DISK, actively participated in the protest movement, and they launched a general strike, but they do not represent the majority of the organized working class. The biggest labor union confederations, which are Turkish and Hakish, issued a single statement, and that statement was a joint statement which is also issued by the employers associations. So instead of being in solidarity with the movement and the left-wing union confederations, the biggest union confederations are in solidarity with the business organizations. And this fact suggests that in the times of the revolt, society's tolerance and the bureaucratic organizations of the working class, which are isolated from their members, are forced to take sides. They cannot be, ambiguous in their position. And unfortunately, in Turkey, they took sides with the capital. And I think our task is to mobilize the workers against their bureaucrats and make them to force their unions to take sides of the 99% with the protesters. So the organized working class is still not there in big numbers. Well, this protest movement is a big thing in Turkey, but and surely it is one of the biggest public demonstrations, popular movement in the history of modern Turkey. But if you're familiar with the Turkish politics, you'll know that in Kurdish populated areas, millions of people are politically active, and it's a common thing when they just fill the big squares and public spaces. The Kurdish people are familiar with such mass uprisings, and we at Socialist Action always take side with the Kurdish struggle, and we respect their right for self-determination, and we support their right for self-determination, just like we support the self-determination for the Quebecois people, for Palestine movements. And if that includes a right for having their own state, that's okay. Self-determination, the right for self-determination includes right for having the respect for having their own state. The Kurdish movement supported, the leadership of the Kurdish movement supported the Taksim movements, this ongoing protests, but they could do better. I'll just spend like 5 minutes to describe the relationship between the Kurdish movement and ongoing protests, because this is a key point. Well, last month, Kurdish movement leaders of the Kurdish movement, and AKP, New Liberal Conservative Islamist government, negotiated a peace deal. We don't know exactly what the terms of the deal was, because the deal was made in closed doors. At least the Turkish citizens don't know what the government promised, or what the steps that the government took on behalf of the Turkish people. Anyway, it's widely known as the peace process. As a part of this peace process, the Kurdish guerrillas declared a ceasefire, and they are withdrawing their forces, PKK militants, from the combat areas. And this Taksim movement started when there was a ceasefire between the Kurdish militants and the Turkish state. And when the Turkish state secured that, when they became sure that in Kurdish populated areas there won't be big demonstrations, they withdrew their riot police from Diyarbakir and other Kurdish populated cities to Istanbul and Ankara. And this so-called peace process helped the government in concentrating their forces, police forces, in metropolitan areas to fight with the protesters. That said, the Kurdish leadership supported the movement, but they could do better. When I say better, I mean the following fact. In Istanbul, only in Istanbul, the Kurdish movement has the power to mobilize 1 million Kurdish people. If they declare strongly, if they announce that, if they call the Kurdish people to go to the streets, they can mobilize 1 million, over 1 million people, Kurdish people. But they did not do that. So I think the second big task, challenge before us is to link the struggle of the Kurdish workers, Kurdish people and Turkish people, and build a common, united struggle. Of course, there are many barriers against that, and one factor is the Turkish nationalism, which is radically different, or which is very different than Kurdish nationalism. That is a nationalism of the oppressed nations, and Turkish nationalism is a nationalism of an oppressor nation. And Turkish nationalism is among the elements in the Taksim movements, and that puts a challenge in our struggle to unite the Kurdish people and Turkish people. But I think this Taksim or Istanbul protests show the fact that there's a hope. I'll just give you an example. I've seen a group of Kurdish militants, Kurdish people, demonstrating with their leader, the flags of PKK and a portrait of their leader, Abdullah Öcalan, and the Turkish nationalists all of a sudden protested them. They were, trying to fight them. And all of a sudden, the crowd started a chant, a slogan, which is something like, Kurdish people and Turkish people should be in solidarity, we should fight together. And they stopped the fight. When a revolt starts, then there appears a chance for building solidarity in the bridges between two nations in a single country. And I think that's the bridge that we should build, which is another key task. This movement lacks a political leadership. And in other words, no political organization in Turkey is ready to take the lead of such a massive movement. The bourgeois, Republican People's Party, in Turkish abbreviations, CHP, is a bourgeois party, is the main opposition. But it supports the movement against Erdogan's AKP. It helped the movement to grow, but it cannot take the movement to take the second big step, which is challenging the capitalist rule. In fact, the Republican People's Party is concerned about the stability of the current mode of production, capitalism. In the first day of the revolt, Istanbul stock market crashed. There was a 10% decrease in the stock prices. And immediately, Republican People's Party got concerned about the state of things in Turkey because it's a bourgeois party. And they started trying to make moderate claims, and they became extremely cautious about not provoking people. And although there are many people who demand the government to resign, who ask the government to resign, the Republican People's Party, which is the main opposition, do not raise that demand. And I think they're not raising that demand. They're not supporting that demand of resignation because they know that such a demand or such a process can further radicalize people, and they don't want that. I don't want to I don't want to spend a lot of time on the socialist organizations in Turkey and the positions they took during this protest. Perhaps in the Q&A session, if you're interested, we can talk about these. But there were many socialist organizations which are really active in the movement. But one thing changed rather tremendously with this movement. Before the protest, before the revolt, if you were a socialist in Turkey, you would feel isolated and alone. And as a socialist, when the revolt began, I felt really good. I went like, he said that, So this gave a kind of morale or boost for the Turkish socialists. It gave a kind of huge moral support to Turkish socialists, and we feel like stronger than before. And there is a tremendous opportunity for Turkish socialists to grow. If you're interested, as I said, we can talk about the socialist organizations in the Q&A. I just want to touch on the issue of fascism. Fascism is a technical or more limited definition in the history of, or in the literature of Trotskyism and Leninism. So we use fascism, the word fascism, very carefully. We characterize Nazism and Mussolini movement as fascism because it was a movement against the working class organizations and Marxism as an ideology. So we do not equate fascism with any form of authoritarianism. In Turkey, there's no doubt that there's an authoritarian government and authoritarian leader, that's Erdogan. The question is whether it's a fascist organization or fascist leadership. I think there are enough reasons to believe so, argue that fact. As you know, in developing countries, or in countries such as Turkey, fascism takes a different form. It usually merges with the state power, state authority. And in Turkey, fascism takes that form. The state is active fascism. And Erdogan, the prime minister, provoked the masses, the mobs, to attack the people protesters in Taksim Square. And that's a fascistic step that a leader could do. So why is there such a fascistic turn on the, why is the Turkish leadership taking such a fascistic turn? Well, the Turkish leadership is in crisis. The imperialism in the Middle East is in crisis for the first thing. First we should see this crisis of the leadership in Turkey from the perspective of the imperialism and the crisis of imperialism in the region. Well, U.S. imperialism wanted to fragment Iraq, and seemingly, apparently, is not successful in its attempt to fragment, to divide Iraq. Secondly, they wanted to destroy Iran or have a victory over Iran, and apparently they are not able to do that. Thirdly, they wanted to transform Syria or control Syria, and apparently they're not successful in their attempt. And imperialism is failing in the Middle East, and the role or task assigned to Erdogan and Turkish leaders in this imperial project is failing too. The Turkish governors or Turkish rulers are not successful in accomplishing their tasks for imperialism. And secondly, Turkish ruling class, the capitalists, are in crisis. They're fragmented. The two different and the two big business organizations in Turkey, TÜSİAD and MÜSİAD, took different positions during the protest, and that shows a split among the ruling class. And when there's a split among the ruling bloc in the ruling